I'm Chris Avina with American Outdoor News. I am here with Jake McGuigan from National Shooting Sports Foundation, and we're talking about the latest gun laws in the Northeast. Jake, thanks for coming on.
Chris, thanks for having me. I wish it was under better circumstances. We're going to cover a lot of the stuff that's been happening kind of in the Northeast, not just this year, but over the past couple of years legislatively, and how it's making it more and more difficult for law-abiding gun owners and sportsmen and women in the region to really exercise their rights.
Well, I guess being a New Yorker, let's start with New York. They put some legislation in over the past year or so. Most recently is the background checks on ammo.
Correct. The ammunition background check was that went all the way back, as you probably remember, back to 2013, 2014 timeframe, when they passed the SAFE Act in New York. Of course, there was very little funding for it. They didn't have any funding in place. And in all honesty, both the Senate and Governor Cuomo at the time understood the difficulty in getting a system in place and the costs associated with it. So they continued to kind of push that forward for many, many years. And unfortunately, your queen governor there has decided that they don't care how much money it costs to impact gun owners and sportsmen. They will spend it and put in a system that I would say has been a Vermont economic incentive program, because a lot of people in New York are heading to other states in order to make their purchases of ammunition. They're not going to wait in lines. They're not going to be subject to the draconian bureaucracy that New York has put into place just to purchase ammunition. So that has been horrible for our retailers, for our retail members in New York. They've been asking for help. They've asked NSSF, and unfortunately, it's something that we've tried to work with the state on, and they just don't want to really work with us on anything.
Now, if I'm not mistaken on this, she basically threw the responsibility into the lap of state police to do the background checks?
Yes, that's falling into state police. I mean, we're seeing that in all states in the Northeast, right? The governor's office just throws it to the state police to figure out how to do it. In all honesty, I don't think the state police really want it. They don't want the responsibility, but they're forced to do that, and it's getting thrown to them to implement a failed system. I mean, you can look back at congressional testimony over many, many years where even the ATF says ammunition registration and background checks does absolutely nothing to curb crime. It's law-abiding citizens that want to purchase their own ammunition, and they are not the criminals.
Well, the state police, first off, it's not their job to run background checks on citizens. And secondly, they're not equipped for this.
They aren't. And one of the funny stories in the beginning was when the background check was taking, there were delays. It was taking days in order for people to purchase ammunition. They'd go purchase the ammo and get a delay for 36, 48 hours and have to come back and get it. There were even current active and then even retired state police that were failing background checks. So you can tell how great this system was that they built if their law enforcement is unable to pass the system in place. It's a situation where they probably went to the lowest bidder, used that bidder to create this system, and in a funny story, there was a situation where I had a conversation with the state police, and they flat out admitted to me that there could be a situation where an individual would pass a background check using the NICS federal system, but then fail an ammunition background check run by the state. I said, if you're telling me you're failing a state background check, why the heck are they getting a firearm? Oh, well, we have seen that situation. I said, well, this is absolutely asinine.
It's unacceptable.
Yeah.
It's unacceptable if you're approved for one, but not the other.
Exactly.
There has to be something going on, something wrong.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I don't disagree with New York, as far as going for pistol permits, they want you to be on the range for firearm instruction. I agree with that. I don't think that's a lot to ask for, especially somebody applying for a new license.
Yeah, Chris, I would just push back on that a little bit because we've seen a similar requirement going into place here in Massachusetts. And the one thing in Massachusetts is access to public ranges is very, very difficult.
Yes.
So you are now putting another impediment in place for individuals and for citizens to exercise their constitutional right. I'm in a location in Massachusetts where it would take me probably 45 minutes to get to a public range in order to do that training. I'm sure there are some places in New York, upstate New York, while there may be some sportsmen's clubs available, there may not be public ranges or indoor ranges during the wintertime that could be used. So that's my only pushback is really the access and making it more difficult. At the end of the day, the legislators that are passing this aren't passing it thinking that it's going to make those people who are getting either a license to carry or permit any safer. They are doing it to make it more and more difficult and people to finally just throw up their arms and say, I don't want to do it. It's too much of a hassle. I don't want to get my permit. That's their end goal because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, they don't want anyone to have a firearm, whether it's for hunting or for personal protection.
True. Now, as far as Massachusetts, this is all pretty recent for you as far as firearm ID cards and uh, how has that affected the whole process of obtaining a firearm?
Yes, so in Massachusetts, this is and what I've told a lot of people is the Bruin decision. Obviously, you're in New York, and you know the Bruin decision that came out of New York City, made it all the way to the Supreme Court, was a victory, but not a victory for those individuals and those citizens that are in what I would call blue states or Democratic controlled states,
Yeah.
because their answer to the Bruin decision was, okay, they passed this. We need to pass more restrictions and make it more difficult for people to get firearms within the Bruin decision. Now, there are many arguments as to what has passed in New York or what has passed in Massachusetts wouldn't pass basically the court test of the Bruin decision, but they don't care because they're wasting taxpayers' money to defend legislation and bills that essentially are unconstitutional, but they don't care. And they'll drag this thing out for years to decades, hoping there may be a change in the Supreme Court before any of those cases get there. Now, on to Massachusetts. Again, Massachusetts, this was their answer to what happened with Bruin, and they needed to, quote unquote, do something.
Yeah.
And this was probably a 12-month process. They introduced a bill last summertime, really pushed a bill through the House. I mean, the means in which they did it, the procedural maneuvers they have done. You're in New York. You know what they do in Albany. They basically ignore the will of the people, throw a bill through different committees and finding ways to get it through. It passed the House, but then it sat there and languished for basically up until the July, August timeframe of this year, where the Senate took it up. Basically, there was a conference committee. They all came together, created a bill, a 120-page bill that essentially nobody read within the 24 hours in which it was implemented. And what happened in Massachusetts is you have a governor speaking consistently that it's about ghost guns, Glock switches, red flags, data collection. Those are the four things. Every press release, every press conference is what you hear.
Yeah.
That doesn't take 120 pages to come up and address those four topics. There are topics in this bill such as non-residents coming to Massachusetts and using a semi-automatic shotgun essentially is illegal based upon the bill. Now, there's been guidance within the past week where they say, no, that's not what we meant. Well, that may not be what you meant, but that's what the bill says.
Yeah.
Governor Healy signed an emergency preamble 2.5 months after the bill passed so that it could be implemented immediately because she realized there was a petition drive in Massachusetts which would have gotten the bill delayed for a couple years. But if she signs an emergency preamble, it basically gets rid of all that petition drive and the bill is effective immediately. So there's situations now. Just over the weekend, I walk into a Walmart locally. Ammunition shelves completely bare. Sign says, because of recent bill passed in Massachusetts, recent law change, no ammunition sales. Because they don't know how to comply.
Yeah.
Right. Nobody in the state knows how to comply, whether it's retailers, whether it's gun owners, whether it's sportsmen, whether it's non-resident sportsmen coming here to the Cape to go hunt sea ducks. They don't know.
It's ambiguous and they don't know how to interpret it. So rather than put themselves in any type of liability.
Correct. And who feels the pain? The small independent retailers in the state.
Sure.
You have small independent retailers that want to do the right thing. They want to make sure they're complying. But you know what they suspended right off the bat? They suspended the state police in training requirements of retailers for 18 months. So you put a bill into place that has all these stipulations and bureaucratic mess and registration and ammunition registration, and dependent on the state to do the training, to train the retailers on how to comply, to implement a system, and they basically said, no, we're going to delay all of that, but you still need to comply. I mean, there's an ammunition component where the registration, there's supposed to be an ammunition registration component, not a background check like New York, but registration of ammunition purchases electronically. Well, that system doesn't exist.
No,
and
it's also unconstitutional.
Yeah, but you know what they're telling retailers? Oh, just get a loose leaf binder and just write the information down. Really? That's a solution to what you've just implemented?
Yeah, we had a flood and all the records were just lost. So
exactly. But I mean, again, they want you to comply, but then they say we're going to suspend the 18-month requirement. So there are going to be retailers in a spot where, and I get the calls all the time. How do I comply? And I wish I could give them better guidance, but when the state police won't tell me, and when they won't tell the retailers, I don't know we don't know what to do.
Now, are people grandfathered in as far as, if you own a shotgun, a duck gun, they're all semi-automatic.
Mm-hmm.
You grandfathered in for owning that and not going to register and get an ID card and jump through hoops and do your song and dance?
Yeah, so there was essentially a grandfathering that if it had been acquired prior to August 1, 2024, and this is dealing with rifles, this is dealing with, what they're classifying now as semi-automatic shotguns, which may be legal, may not be legal. I mean, again, you have 4 different people that read it and you're going to get 4 different opinions. So yes, you are grandfathered in, but there is a registration component now in Massachusetts where they want you to register every single firearm you possess, whether you inherited it, whether you moved to the state with that firearm, in a system that also does not exist at this current time. So, and a lot of it says, the bill says that it needs to be legally possessed and registered prior to August 1, 2024.
So the impact, the residual impact is you could own it, but you have to register it, and
in a system that doesn't exist.
Yeah. So write it down, tear it up, and say it's registered.
Yeah, it's a scary situation when they can come in and just do this unilaterally, and then when you reach out to legislators and reach out to the agencies in charge of this, and listen, off the record, I've spoken to people in these agencies and said we don't, and it's unfunded, mind you, Chris. There is zero funding in any of this bill in 120 pages to give to the state police, to do training, to build the system, to do anything. Now, granted, the state has spent $1.1 billion on illegal immigration in the state, but they won't spend the money on something that, they put into place to impact the law-abiding citizens.
Well, I think there's a ulterior motive behind that.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch the debate with Trump and Harris, she came right out and said, I'm a gun owner. Tim Walz is a gun owner. We're not going to take your arms. Stop the lies. But the very next week in North Carolina, she's there saying, we're going to take your ARs. We're going to enforce red flag laws. We're going to enforce registration. So what is it?
It's unfortunate because, we're in an election cycle where there's a lot of misinformation out there and nobody's doing a kind of a historical analysis. When Vice President Harris was the Attorney General in California, I was doing California lobbying for NSSF at the time, and she was the Attorney General there. And I can't tell you the hoops. We think Massachusetts and New York are difficult, but that Attorney General's office and what they were implementing and failed micro stamping technology and saying that it's out there and in the public domain and the retail and the manufacturers need to implement it. That Department of Justice and the Attorney General in California did not like firearms. They do not like firearms, and I can guarantee you, when she was Attorney General and even in the current format, she does not like firearms. Did anyone find out what firearm she owns? The handgun? Do we know the make and model of it? Did we get that information yet?
No, she hasn't clarified, but I think it's Tim Walz took it to Tiananmen Square during that. During that revolution that he didn't attend.
Exactly.
Now, here's a question. What are the repercussions for somebody that don't comply?
See, I've seen this in other northeastern states like Rhode Island. Rhode Island passed a magazine ban a couple years ago with a 10-round restriction, and it was a confiscation. Turn your magazines in. Not actually, you can keep it. You're not grandfather. Use them at the range. Keep them in your house and not carry them. None of that. It was turn your magazines in. We've appealed that decision. We were part of that court case in Rhode Island, and since then, not a single person has been prosecuted on that. And there have been some cases where people have been caught with 15-rounder, in a handgun, but they won't prosecute it because think they want the case, the court precedent or the case law, right? So unfortunately, in a state like Massachusetts, there is going to be a situation where, maybe there's you have a traffic infraction, they search your vehicle and you have something, there. It's going to be more charges on top of the charges, right? That's what ends up happening. And that's the biggest concern is that how do all these gun owners know, right? I mean, none of these people know that, I would say you'd be lucky to know if half knew that this law passed. I mean, there are people that have LTCs that bought one handgun for personal protection during COVID or, during riots that we saw in this country, and they don't know if it's what's legal and what's not, and again, they'll always say ignorance of the law is not an excuse. But unfortunately, when you pass this stuff, nobody, I'll tell you, you're going to have compliance. You take a look at Illinois, right? They wanted everyone to register their quote unquote assault weapons, their semi-automatic rifles, and I think their compliance rate was less than 1%. And they already know on the FOID, it's a FOID card in Illinois. They technically already know what you have, but nobody followed up on that registration. It's
logistically impossible.
Yeah.
There's what, 300 million guns in this country?
I would say, probably even a little bit higher than that now recently with, obviously we're over, I think we're over 60 months straight of 1 million background checks a month. So it's, we'll continue on that road.
There's no way they could follow up on any of that.
No.
And at least make a dent in it.
Listen, you talk to the rank and file of the FOP, law enforcement, they're usually strong Second Amendment supporters. They know if they pull someone over with an LTC or a permit in New York, those aren't the ones that are causing issues in the criminals. They're on our side. Unfortunately, they're usually governed by a governor like you have in New York and that we have in Massachusetts, or in a bureaucracy like the state police, and unfortunately they're told what they should be doing. But at the end of the day, none of this stuff is making anyone safer. We know that a criminal that is going going to commit a crime isn't going to take the Glock switch off their Glock. They're not going to put in a 10-round magazine because there's and leave their 15-rounder at home or 17-rounder. It's feel-good legislation. It's a press release. They put it out there and say, hey, look at what we did here in the state. We're making the state safer. And the data will prove that it does not. But they don't care because you and I and everyone else that are, trying to exercise our rights are now restricted.
So as gun owners, what can we do to counteract these new laws?
The unfortunate reality in the states that we're in is that the legislative makeup is so far removed from what it used to be. I mean, in New York State, you used to have a Republican Senate that would help contain a lot of the bad stuff that would come out of the assembly. I continue to tell people you have to get active, you have to get involved, and I know the concern a lot from gun owners is almost apathy. Right? What else is going to happen to us? What else are they going to take away?
Mm-hmm.
But it all starts at the local level, helping out. I would say maybe decide to run for office, but unfortunately the smart people don't want to do that because, your family and everything else is subjected to a lot of stuff that you probably don't want to. But I would just say that don't let this push you around or put you down. Continue to, exercise your rights. Continue to hunt. Continue to go to the range and target shoot. And while they make it a little bit more difficult, it still can't completely take it away, from us as gun owners and sportsmen and women.
See, here's the thing. At any demographic, the gun owner will always complain, I want my Second Amendment right. But out of any voting demographic, the gun owner is the smallest turnout.
And that is it absolutely scares me. We have done some recent polling where it was looking at sportsmen, women, gun owners, and I think 70% of them said they were very likely to vote. 70%. Now, that's high compared to polling in the past. But you're telling me 30% of the people will not go out and exercise. They talk about exercising the Second Amendment right. You don't want to exercise your right to vote. You don't want to try to move the needle. I've seen in some states that have in-state gun groups. I won't use any examples, but in-state gun groups. Some of their members had 30% of them registered to vote. 30% registered to vote in these gun groups. And, listen, I'm in Massachusetts. I will go and vote in November. I will go vote in the local level, federal level, and the presidential level. And that gives me the ability to complain. I tell people, if you want to complain about something, okay, you can complain. Did you vote? Oh, it doesn't matter.
It does matter.
It does matter. It does matter. And if the turnout could be the way it should be, in many states, I think it would make a difference. You got to start small and get a few, people in office that are going to represent you, and you got to start small. But voting is the number one key, and we're basically less than 30 days away. And
300 million gun owners, guns in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say every person owns two.
Mm-hmm.
So that leaves what, 150 million?
Mm-hmm.
150 million people. Do you think we have the ability to sway an election or a vote?
I do believe if they voted and got out to vote, they could move the needle. Remember, there's a change in the demographic of gun owners too. We've seen it. I mean, we're close to first-time gun owners. Females are over 40%.
Oh, yeah.
We're seeing Hispanics and blacks buying firearms at higher levels than ever before. Again, because you constantly hear the drumbeat. You had COVID, that people were afraid of their safety. You had defund the police. You had riots. You had all these situations that made people fearful for their family. So the many new gun owners went out, took classes, purchased a firearm, have a firearm for self-defense. Now, at the end of the day, is that the one issue they're going to vote on?
No.
You don't know. We've had the similar issue. We talk about unions, right? Unions have a very, very high membership of gun owners, right? But at the end of the day, is it the gun or is it their job that they're going to vote on? I think they're starting to learn that actually it's not a cut and dry answer right now as to who to vote for if you're a union member. And in all honesty, you're starting to see a little bit of change in kind of that mindset when it's all said and done. But yes, I do believe gun owners, if they got out, they registered to vote, they voted. Yes, you can move the needle, and you can make a huge difference in this country and at the local level.
Well, clock is ticking. If you're not registered, get out there and register, because this is a very important election. And if you want to preserve your right, not just your Second Amendment right, your right to free speech, that's on the line too. So I think we really need to get out, do our part, and not sit on the couch and complain.
I agree completely, Chris, and I think you have a platform for now. you you may not have a platform in the future. Yeah, they're trickling down and taking away our rights one at a time. And the scary thing is they're attacking the First Amendment, very similar to how they've tried to take our Second Amendment rights in this country.
That's a fact. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to speak to us today. And where can we find out more information? I know the NSSF always is up to date on the newest laws or press releases or blurbs that might come out. Where can we get in touch with the NSSF?
Easiest way to do it is just go to our website, which is NSSF.org. There's sections there for the media. There's sections there on advocacy and government relations. There's wonderful sections on our Real Solutions campaign about firearm safety. So we do have a lot of great information on that website at NSSF.org. We also have a blog there where we cover a lot of recent events. So it's really a good opportunity there. And I oversee the state level lobbying across the whole country. I have 6 other individuals that work for me that are regionally based. I have the Northeast, so I have a very low bar of success as they continue to take away our rights. But we do have a regional team across the country that represents our membership and represents the industry, very, very well. So I appreciate the opportunity to come on today.
And if you're not a member of the NSSF, you really should be.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot for taking the time to speak to us again, and definitely go to NSSF website, check them out, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Chris. Have a good day.